of the bill. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I outlined the purpose of the bill in my earlier speech, and it is a short and clear bill with a very clear purpose. It's our desire to move quickly in order for the changes to take effect from the 6th of April 2024. I sense the desire of the House to move quickly in cutting people's taxes, and I will detain the committee no longer.
Oh, is that it? Right. So the question is, the clause 1 stand part of the bill. James Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I fear my speech may be marginally longer than the Minister's, because but I can assure you, Mr Chair, it won't be too lengthy, because as I made clear at second reading, we'll be supporting the national insurance reductions that the clauses in the bill seek to deliver. We know that Clause 1 of the bill seeks to achieve that by reducing the main rates of employee Class 1 and self-employed Class 4 contributions, as well as the reduced rate that applies in relation to a historic group of married women and widows. Clause 2 seeks to amend the calculation of annual maximum contributions and is effectively consequential from Clause 1. And Clause 3 sets out the bill will come into force on April the 6th. I would like to ask the Minister just one question when he responds, which is whether he could set out what conversations he has had with employers and payroll software developers about whether they will be ready in time to implement the provisions in this bill from the start of the next financial year. I think I heard the Exchequer Secretary say in the second reading that he was confident a majority of employees would receive this tax cut in the beginning of the financial year. But is the Minister confident that every relevant employee will indeed receive the cut to national insurance in their first paycheck of financial year 24-25? More widely, though, Mr Speaker, we support what this simple bill seeks to achieve, so we will support all three clauses being approved by this committee of the whole House.
Well, marginally longer, as you said. Kirsty Blackman.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. Hopefully that's an acceptable one to use. I wanted to speak about the bill in general and some of the concerns that we have about the bill. I mean, the reality is that this is the wrong measure at the wrong time, as I said during the course of second reading. The member from Hampstead and Kilburn spoke just earlier about her concerns about the SNP's policies on oil and gas and the fact that she says that we're not putting workers first. Unfortunately, the Labour Party's plans in relation to green investment and energy will mean that 100,000 jobs will be lost in Scotland, which is very clearly not putting workers first, unless it's only workers in England that count, given that the money is going to go for nuclear power. In terms of the actual details of some of this bill, the reality is that public services are creaking. We have a situation where they're really struggling, and having spoken to the Electoral Commission, there are concerns about whether or not they'll even be able to deliver properly elections, given that the voter ID has come in. All of the by-elections that have happened, they've been able to co-opt people in from other areas in order to ensure that those by-elections were run properly. Will the Minister clarify and make absolutely clear that if there's a general election this year, which there almost has to be, unless there's one certainly in this coming financial year anyway, will local authorities have enough money and enough people to be able to deliver and service those elections? Will they have enough resources in order to be able to do that? In terms of the NHS, the changes that have been made to the NHS from the autumn 2022 statement, the autumn 2022 statement had more money for the NHS in 24-25 than the budget does. So it's a bit of a cheek for anyone on that side of the House to stand up and say that they're putting more money into the NHS. They're putting less money into the NHS than they were in, or than they proposed or set to in autumn 2022. And the consequentials that arise from the increase that they've put in this year are actually less than the in-year consequentials that the Scottish Government had from for the NHS consequentials in this current year. So it's a very minor increase because it only works out to in-year terms. So, do you want to come in? In terms of that, it is ridiculous that they could stand up and say this extra money is going into the NHS when it's demonstrably less than they intended to spend on the NHS back in autumn 2022. The bill itself is going to make changes to the national insurance rates. The national insurance rate changes will disproportionately impact higher earners. The Minister was slightly disingenuous when he stood up and said that, that people on lower incomes will get a lower percentage, or will get a higher percentage of savings. Yes, but it's significantly less money. If you're a Band 2 worker in the NHS, you will be getting £341 reduction in your national insurance rates. If you are an MP in this House, you will get 4 times that. How is it fair that somebody in this House, who's in the main not struggling to make ends meet, will get £1,300, sorry, whereas somebody working in the NHS will only get £300. They've seen exactly the same increase in energy bills as we have. They've seen exactly the same increase in council tax. Actually, no, they've got a much higher increase in council tax bills if they live in England compared to if they live in Scotland. They've got the same increases. They've seen a 25% hike in food. Given the proportion of food spend that those on lower incomes spend, they spend more money on food proportionately than those people with higher incomes. The 25% increase that there has been in inflation in food disproportionately hits families who are earning less. Therefore, we need to give even more to those families, rather than saying, well, it's a higher percentage of your income, so you're okay. You'll be fine with £340, where those people who are earning 85 grand a year, standing in the House of Commons, deserve £1,300. I mean, the reality is, what the member from the backbenches for Labour, who gave a very good speech on this, the reality is that this is the essence of trickle-down economics in action. They're hoping that if rich people get richer and inequality increases, then those people at the bottom of the pile will somehow magically get richer as well. There are much better ways to do this. And one of the worst things about this whole situation, apart from the fact that Labour are unwilling to oppose it, one of the worst things about this situation is the decimation of public services that will result from it. The fact that we have had 14 years of austerity, the fact that that is set to continue, people are going to lose out on those vital services. They are vital. The NHS is absolutely vital. Every one of us has had some sort of interaction with the NHS. And yet the government are setting themselves up, as my colleague said, for decades of pay battles with staff members because they're going to be unable to give the uplifts that people deserve in terms of pay. They're setting us up for a decimation of those services. I mentioned earlier in the budget speech last week that £1 billion as cuts have been made by local councils to arts funding. £1 billion. That means that children cannot access arts education. They cannot access going to a local theatre with reduced price tickets from their local council. They cannot access all of these extra things. People are struggling to have the most basic of services because local authorities are absolutely creaking at the seams, and yet the UK's government's priorities is to allow a 4.99% increase in council tax and to ensure that higher earners get £1,300, whereas those on the lowest incomes, those on minimum wage, £11.44 an hour, working 20 hours a week, will see absolutely no benefit from this.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to a couple of those comments, and I probably won't respond to everything we've heard today, as we had a debate on the budget and addressed many of the issues thoroughly. But in response to the new comments, I can assure the Honourable Lady that we always make sure that the democratic process is adequately funded. She was dismissive of the £2.45 billion increase in NHS spending that was outlined in the budget. It is a significant amount, and she's aware it does mean that it's a real-term increase in spending. I do agree with her about the importance of arts, culture and all the other areas she mentioned, which is precisely precisely why in the budget as well we had measures, for example, to extend tax reliefs. Relating to other matters raised as well, to my opposite number, relating to the logistics of implementing and executing the tax changes, we do understand the impacts of policy changes and would like to put on record how very grateful we are for all of those who have implemented and executed the recent changes so speedily and so effectively. Employees whose employers are unable to make changes in time and have left their employment may request a refund from HMRC, and the government are confident that the majority of software developers will be able to make changes to their payroll software in time for the 6th of April. In terms of other points relating to the amendments, Mr. Chairman, we have outlined the policy today. The impacts of any changes to policy would, of course, be subject to the usual public scrutiny, including from the OBR on cost. It's therefore not necessary to produce a report at this stage. And the OBR's Economic and Fiscal Outlook publication from the spring 2024 budget included analysis of the impacts of threshold freezes, including the number of people brought into paying tax. It's therefore not necessary to produce any additional report at this stage, and we do not believe, therefore, the new clause is necessary.
Very much. The question is that Clause 1 stand part of the bill. As may I have opinion say aye? Aye. Or the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. With the leave of the House, I'll put the questions on the remaining clauses together. The question is that Clauses 2 and 3 stand part of the bill. As may I have opinion say aye? Aye. Or the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to New Clause 1, with which it will be convenient to consider New Clause 2. James Murray to move New Clause 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I beg to move New Clause 1 in my name. Mr. Chair, as I made clear in the last debate, we support the national insurance reductions that the clauses in this bill seek to deliver. However, in the budget statement last week, the Chancellor followed the announcement of these reductions by pulling a rabbit out of his hat that frankly left us shocked and deeply concerned. The Chancellor closed his budget statement by committing the Conservative Party to a £46 billion unfunded tax plan. It is quite incredible, and it tells you everything you need to know about the state of the Conservative Party, that the Chancellor would use his last budget before the general election to promise such a plan. This plan leaves a £46 billion hole in the public finances, puts family finances at risk, and raises the prospect of higher tax bills for pensioners across the country. Mr. Chair, people across Britain are still paying the price for the reckless, unfunded tax plans in the disastrous mini-budget. And so it beggars belief that the very top of the Conservative Party, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, now want to go into the general election with an unfunded tax plan even greater than what we saw in autumn 2022. We know just how damaging irresponsible unfunded tax plans from the Conservatives are for the British economy and for families across the country. And yet for a week now, and in Parliament today, ministers from the Prime Minister down have been unable to say how this £46 billion tax plan will be funded. People deserve answers. Are the Conservatives planning to increase taxes, including on Britain's 8 million tax-paying pensioners? Are they planning to increase borrowing? Are they planning to cut our vital public services to pay for their £46 billion black hole? Ministers are refusing to answer, and so our amendment, our new Clause 1, will force them to do so. Our new Clause 1 would require the Treasury to come clean and set out the impact of the Conservatives' plans to reduce national insurance contributions for employees and self-employed people to zero. It would force the Treasury to be honest about the impact of their plan on total receipts from national insurance and the impact this would have on overall public finances. It would compel the government to set out how they would fund the black hole that their plan creates. I urge members on all sides of the House to support our amendment, including Conservative members, if they want to prove that they can put country before party, if they want to prove that they can put fiscal responsibility ahead of loyalty to their weak Prime Minister. Mr. Chair, this vote matters because the public deserve answers on the Conservatives' £46 billion unfunded tax plan. The public deserve to know, the public deserve to know whether the Prime Minister's commitment to abolish national insurance means tax hikes for pensioners, even higher borrowing, cuts to important public services, or all of the above. I'll give way.
I hate reading, and probably won't be able to read it either because my eyes are not good. But the Shadow Minister says at the end of the budget, this is what the Chancellor said, but this is the quote of what the Chancellor said. When it is, about further cuts, when it is responsible, when it can be achieved without increasing borrowing, and when it can be delivered without compromising high-quality public services. So what's the problem that the Shadow Minister has about cutting taxes on working people?
The problem that we have with the Chancellor's announcement is that he has said that in the next Parliament he wants to abolish national insurance contributions. The Prime Minister said that the Saturday following the budget. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have again and again, in emails to party members, in interviews with media outlets, made very clear that this is what they want to do. Now, I appreciate that some of the Treasury ministers have been flip-flopping a bit when they've been out on their media rounds, not entirely being able to toe the party line. But frankly, going to the general election, Mr. Chair, I would listen to what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor say. And if they say they want to abolish national insurance, if they say they want to create a £46 billion black hole in the public finances, then they should stand up here and defend that to the people of Great Britain today. Now, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make some progress because the reckless way in which the Conservatives announced their unfunded tax plan and have refused to give any more details exposes the risk of 5 more years of them in power. It is clear that the Conservatives will happily gamble with the public finances and yet leave working people being forced to pay the price. As they have been unwilling to explain how their plan will be funded, we will today vote to force the government to come clean on the impact of their £46 billion tax plan on the state of public finances. They will.
I'm very, very interested in this because I'm listening very carefully to what the honourable member is saying, and I'm struggling to understand if he's for or against the cut in national insurance that's being proposed. It would be really helpful if he'd be clear on that, because what it sounds like he's saying is that they don't support it. But if that is the case, why wouldn't they have come through the lobbies with us in opposing it?
I'm very happy to clarify for the honourable gentleman. We've had quite an extended debate about this today, where we've made clear on several occasions that we support the government's cut in national insurance because we believe the tax burden on working people is too high. We want to see that come down. What we do not support is an unfunded £46 billion tax plan, which the Chancellor has committed the Conservative Party about, and that is the subject of our new clause we're debating right now. I look forward to the honourable gentleman joining us in voting for our new clause in a few moments. Yes, I will.
I'm very grateful. He's making, I think, a really important point here, not least because, to all intents and purposes, the Chancellor's ambition is to abolish national insurance altogether. That unfunded tax cut requires a 6% increase in income tax just for us to stand still unless something's going to give. And isn't it the case that national insurance qualifying years count to how much state pension you are entitled to get? So how do we recalculate one's entitlement to state pension if the qualifying years don't exist because national insurance doesn't exist?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that very important intervention, setting out just some of the problems created by this reckless plan that the Conservatives have put out into the public domain and are refusing to explain or withdraw. You know, we know that if the Chancellor's proposal to merge national insurance and income tax were to be followed, that would push up income tax by 6.5%, meaning in particular pensioners pay on average £800 more a year as a result of their plans, not to mention the very important points my honourable friend made about the impact it has on eligibility for basic state pension. Again, questions which are not being answered by the front bench. When the front bench responded earlier, they had nothing to say on any of these points which are concerning people across the country. And that is why we have tabled New Clause 1, because it will force the government to come clean about this. They are refusing to stand at the dispatch box and explain how they would fund their £46 billion black hole or to withdraw their policy entirely. New Clause 1 today will force them to set this out because they have been unwilling to explain how they will fund their plan. We will force them to come clean on the impact on the public finances. Yes, I will.
I thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. Not only is there this concern as to where the funding would come from, but in the Treasury Select Committee just now, the Chancellor refused to rule out increasing income tax in order to fund this abolition of NIC contributions. Now, the House of Commons Library has said that merging NICs and income tax would require an 8% increase in the basic and higher rates of income tax. What will that do for the long-term future of the UK economy?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for bringing us that update from the Treasury Committee and what the Chancellor has been saying. And again, we can see the Chancellor being reckless by talking about merging national insurance with income tax without having a second thought for what impact that would have on hard-pressed taxpayers, and particularly pensioners, who currently at the moment, of course, do not pay national insurance on their earnings and would be hit by a tax increase as a result of the merger of national insurance with income tax. This is just another example of how reckless these plans are, and actually how reckless it is for the Treasury ministers to refuse to stand up there and to explain how their reckless plans would be funded. The public deserve to know. If ministers vote against our new clause today, or they refuse to come clean, then the British people will have it confirmed yet again that the Conservatives cannot be trusted with the economy, cannot be trusted with public finances, and cannot be trusted with the finances of households across our country.
Hear, hear.
Review of effects of reducing employee and self-employed NIC contributions to zero.
The question is that new clause 1 be read a second time. Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you very much, Mr Evans. I don't know, surely it's long overdue that it should be Sir Nigel, but we'll go with Mr Evans for today. I stand to move new clause 2 in the name of my honourable friend, the member for Richmond Park. Members will see that the effect of new clause 2 would be fairly short in its compass. It would compel the Treasury to report to this House its forecast of change to the number of people who are set to be paying national insurance contributions as a result of the thresholds for payment remaining frozen until 2028 instead of increasing in line with CPI, which would be the case otherwise. The Chancellor has spoken, other ministers have spoken today about the pride the government takes in what they are doing. So I think in the interests of transparency, this is really something with which the government should have no difficulty in accepting. I'm sure it's merely an inadvertent admission that it's not part of the bill already. It is, though, I think, apparent that comments by the Chancellor, the Prime Minister and others about this idea of abolishing national insurance altogether has started a debate, and we've seen some of that in the debate here this afternoon already. It is a substantial commitment to make, £46 billion. We don't know yet where that money would come from. That's maybe not the novelty that it used to be, certainly before the mini-budget. But I think it does offer us an opportunity to think just a little bit about the nature of national insurance as a tax, because it is quite distinct in its composition and its operation. In practical terms, functionally, it's more or less like any other tax, in as much as the money is paid into the exchequer, it fills the coffers, which then gets spent as the government or governments see fit in relation to health, policing, transport, ministers' legal fees, whatever else it is going to be. But as a matter of intent and purpose, however, national insurance is identifiably different from the other taxes that we pay. More than any other levy, it is the symbol of our shared obligations, what we owe each other as a society and as communities in support throughout our lives. The point of national insurance is that we pool and share resources geographically and generationally. We pay our stamp on each payslip, trusting that when the time comes for us to retire, someone else will continue to pay taxes that will fund our pensions. So it is, let's remember that the roots of this tax came from Lloyd George's budget and the introduction of national insurance, which came along with the introduction of the pension. And that's why you have the legacy of the link between national insurance and pensions that the honourable gentleman pointed out in his intervention earlier on, and that is significant. These are matters that must be clarified before we undertake a change of this sort. But at the heart of any healthy liberal democratic society, there is the idea that we have lasting obligations to one another. We have obligations to those we know, those we do not, to generations that are older than us and those that are yet to be born. We can be bound by policies we disagree with, and sometimes we must pay taxes for things that we dislike or we even feel that we do not need. That is the system in which the national insurance contribution actually has a demonstrably significant and different impact than other taxes. It is part of the tapestry of government and public life in this country. This is perhaps just pulling at a thread, but the Minister and indeed people in all parts of this House, I think, would be well advised to consider exactly what they may be unravelling by pulling at this thread. Having full transparency from the government about the effect of the freezing of the national insurance contributions in the way that is intended and has been proposed would be an important part of that debate going ahead, and I beg to move.
Thank you very much. And if someone from the Liberal Democrats could inform the Chair as to who their tellers would be, as your amendment has been selected for a separate division. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned earlier, the impacts of policy and any changes to policy would be subject to the usual public scrutiny, including from the OBR, on costs. It's therefore not necessary to produce additional reports. I will not play into the hands of the scaremongering of the opposition by commenting further on their scaremongering that's happening today. I refer him to the answer I gave that I thought was quite clear some moments ago. I am sorry he is incapable of understanding the difference between an ambition and a policy, but the rest of the House seems to understand it. Hopefully he'll catch up at some point.
Are you giving way? Sorry, Minister, were you giving way? Oh, there we go.
Look at that. The question is that new clause 1 be read a second time. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. You ready? Order. The question is that new clause 1 be read a second time. As many opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tell us for the ayes, Mary Glindon, Tonia Antoniazzi. Tell us for the noes, Mark Jenkinson and Joy Morrissey.
Order.
The ayes to the right were 170. The noes to the left were 292.
Thank you. The ayes to the right, 170. The noes to the left, 292. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock. New clause 2 has been selected for separate decision. Alistair Carmichael to move.
Review of effects of frozen thresholds.
Question is that new clause 2 be read a second time. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. The question is that new clause 2 be read a second time. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. Tellers for the ayes. Mary Glindon and Tonya Antoniazzi. Tellers for the noes. Joy Morrissey and Mark Jenkins. Order. Order.
The ayes to the right, 169. The noes to the left, 293.
Thank you. The ayes to the right, 169. The noes to the left, 293. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. So we just go straight to order. Order.
What?
Question about report.
No, it's in the article.
Order.
I beg to report that the committee has gone through the bill and directed me to report the bill without amendment.
Thank you. No amendments on consideration, so we move to third reading. The question is that the bill be now read the third time